right, we are live.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Audit Committee Chair Nate Hathaway. I'd like to welcome you all to the April 18th Audit Committee meeting. The Audit Committee was established with responsibilities to review internal audit reports, review with management and the external auditors the results of the financial statements audit, report to City Council about committee activities, issues, and related recommendations as needed, and provide an open avenue of communication between internal audit, the external auditors, and City Council. All committee members and staff are participating virtually, and we appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently. We're streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website and also on the committee page. And lastly, we have an option for the public to listen live by phone. So for those of you out there today, welcome. We'll start off with roll call. So I will now go through and introduce all the committee members who are participating virtually. Please make sure to mute your microphone if you are not speaking, and you may unmute your microphone when you have a question or would like to speak. So committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. First up, Secretary Andrew Emery.
Hello.
All right, Councilwoman Sage Turner.
Good afternoon.
All right, Debbie Evanchek.
Hello.
And Sandra Frempong. You out there?
Hi.
Hey, Sandra.
How are you?
All right, so we can then move on to the agenda items. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. Additionally, I ask that committee members raise their hand to speak, and I will call upon them. So our first agenda item is the approval of the January 18th, 2024 Audit Committee minutes. Any questions, comments, changes we need to discuss? All right, take that as a no.
I'll move to approve.
Sounds good. Perfect. All right. Let's see. So we can move to vote on this item. So committee members, when I say your name, please say yay or nay. Andrew Emery.
Yay.
Debbie Evanchek.
Yay.
Sandra Frempong.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Sage Turner.
Aye.
And myself, yay. All right, so that motion passes. And next up, we have the internal audit plan. So I'll turn it over to Lauren Brune, Internal Audit Program Manager, and Tim Leitz and Ruth Thomas from Jefferson Wells.
Thank you for that introduction, Nate. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lauren Brune, and I serve as the Internal Audit Program Manager in the Finance and Management Services Department. I will present the internal audit plan and then let our colleagues at Jefferson Wells give an update. So these are our key takeaways for today, and we'll go into each of these bullet points in the coming slides. The internal audit program is now fully staffed, and the city has contracted with a vendor to perform audits using the risk assessment as a roadmap. The goal is to perform 4 internal audits this calendar year. We are working on developing an internal audit policy as well. And lastly, the city's employee ethics and compliance hotline is getting renewed attention, and we are promoting that internally. So these are our goals for the internal audit program. We will be identifying areas of high risk in the realms of financial, compliance, or operational. Then our internal audit firm will engage in a deeper dive to identify the root causes of those risks by coordination with the internal audit program manager. The internal audit firm will provide their findings and recommendations to mitigate those identified issues. And the internal audit program manager will track those audit recommendations to completion, sharing the progress with the city manager's office. and ideally resulting in improved operations and or compliance within that operation. So this is an overview of the internal audit program. The risk assessment I mentioned earlier was completed in February of 2023 by Cherry Beckert, who are our external auditors. And this risk assessment will serve as the roadmap for our internal audit engagements. The city is now under contract with Jefferson Wells, who are joining us today as the third party to conduct those internal audits. And the Strategic Services Manager in Finance, Frank McGowan, will supervise the internal audit program. The Internal Audit Program Manager, that is me, I will act as the liaison between Jefferson Wells and the operation being audited, as well as tracking responses to and completion of recommendations of those internal audits. So this is our audit plan for the calendar year of 2024. The first audit will be of Harrah's Cherokee Center, Asheville, and that was identified in the risk assessment under the cultural and recreational area with 5 critical and 3 high-risk areas to consider. And so we prioritize that as the first audit project to be completed. That audit is underway, and we are working on scoping that out currently and starting to conduct the field work. Our second audit project for the year will be focused on fleet operations. So we are in the process of scoping out that audit project currently. Then we plan to conduct a grant management and compliance audit, which will be a process review to ensure compliance with grant requirements is taking place. And lastly, we plan to conduct a IT and cybersecurity related audit. So with that, I will turn it over to Jefferson Wells to provide more detail on the current audit project.
Thank you, Lauren.
Slides right now. Just one second.
Thank you so much. There we go. I think we can go to the next slide, Lauren. Thank you. I also have Ruth Thomas joining me today from Jefferson Wells as well. She is my engagement manager for the city of Asheville this year. Happy to have her joining us for the first time, so you'll get to meet her here in a second. I was able to be with you all in January to initially get introduced to the audit committee there at the city. And here are the 4 bullet points we really were talking about in that January meeting. And I'd like to give you a quick update of where we are today. So Lauren had mentioned and referenced the Cherry Beckert risk assessment that was done back in 2023. From that risk assessment, we developed the 3 to 4 audit projects that Lauren had just mentioned earlier. So our audit calendar has been finalized with Lauren and Frank and the finance team, along with the city manager. So we've got approval there and we're underway. We have the bullet point to review the cease the harm audit results and work with city management to incorporate those results into future audits as needed. We got a link from Lauren and Frank last week to that report that was just released. So Ruth and I are in the process of going through that and making sure we are fully aware of that and coordinate appropriately with that recently released report. We wanted to meet, one of the bullet points back in January is we meet some of the members of the City of Asheville leadership team. We've met with Deborah, who's here today with us, her assistant city managers, the IT services director we met one-on-one as well. The finance team, we've met a number of people there. Certainly got to spend time with Frank and Lauren over the last couple months, but also I was there in person last week to meet with them for a couple of hours to get to know them and get to know Lauren as the new member of the internal audit manager position. We were also on site for a bit to kick off this Harrah's Cherokee Center audit there at the arena. The executive in charge of the arena walked us through his operation and the facilities. So Lauren, Frank, and I got to see that in person last week as well. And then the last bullet point that we covered back in January is really just to schedule our initial internal audit project during the first quarter. I should say that the third quarter, because it's the third quarter for you all in the fiscal year 2024. As Lauren had referenced earlier, that arena audit is underway. We're about 2 weeks into that audit. And we also have another audit, the fleet audit, that was mentioned to us last week. When we were up there, we have that in planning and scoping stage that Ruth is going to mention here in a second. So that is an update of what we discussed back in January at the audit committee meeting with you all. Entertain any questions that you all might have for me at this point on any of these bullet points. Okay. Lauren, maybe the next slide, and I'll turn it over to Ruth.
Okay, hi. I'm Ruth Thomas, and as Tim mentioned, I'm one of the engagement managers at Jefferson Wells, and it's nice meeting you all today. As been mentioned, we have finalized the 2024 calendar year audit plan with the 4 audits that Lauren mentioned, and we are currently in the process of already working on the Harris Cherokee Center Arena 1. And all the planning and scoping has been completed. The engagement memo has been completed and executed already. And we have one of our managers, Melanie Spammer, who's performing the detailed deep dive into the high-risk areas identified. And she's currently working on the cash management area, where she's in the process of setting up walkthroughs to talk to the personnel that actually collect and review the cash, as well as who's performing the cash account reconciliations and who's reviewing it. So right now she's in the early stages of doing all that information and getting it together. And then, as Tim mentioned, we are also in the process of planning and scoping out the second audit around the fleet operations. And we are currently working on the engagement memo, and we hope to have it ready for the first round of review by the end of next week. And
then,
Tim?
Sure. Thanks, Ruth. We do have the audit team tentatively identified already this week to start working on the fleet audit. It will consist of an internal audit professional, a data analytics professional who will be doing some data analytics work around this audit, which is good, some automation and looking at large populations of data to analyze there. And we also have a procurement, supply chain, vendor management expert on my team who will be part of that audit as well. So 3 great experts lined up to start that fleet audit in the near future. Lastly, we've mentioned this already earlier in the previous slide. Ruth and I are going through the Cease the Harm report findings right now and make sure that we are fully aware of those and take those into consideration when we are doing future audit work for the city later this year. Maybe pause there. And again, if there's any questions for us, we're happy to answer at this time.
I'm curious, what is Seize the Harm?
Was that Sandra?
What is
Yes.
Cease the Harm?
Cease the Harm, yeah. Lauren and you and Tony, maybe you guys could answer that question better than I can at this point.
I'll take a little stab at it. So we have we formed a reparations commission a couple of years ago, and they have been at task to try and come to some solutions and programmatic changes and buckets of influence and needs in the community that can help address issues that have been in our community for a long time. One of the things that they came back with early on was that they wanted to see a Seize the Harm audit. And it's across a lot of parts of the cities, but there were some findings that were specific to audits. So they're talking about essentially a document that the city has taken under its wing and is trying to deploy in all these departments. And there were some criteria that related just to our audit processes. So yeah,
Thank you.
does that help?
Yes, thank you.
I see there's a question from Debbie.
Yeah, if you were going to categorize the Harris Cherokee internal audit work, would it be more operational or compliance, financial? How are you viewing it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Debbie, and certainly would take some input from Ruth here too. But overall, predominantly operational, but there is some compliance piece in there with complying with city policies and procedures to make sure those are being adhered to. We will be looking obviously at some of the financial fundamentals to make sure controls are in place. We're already looking at reconciliations and the cash process, cash collection process right there, Debbie. So it's really a combination of a variety of different areas. Good question. Thank you. Ruth, did I miss anything? I should have you.
Nope, you did a good job of covering it around the financial and compliance as well as the areas that you mentioned. And, you know, we're looking at the areas that you mentioned, cash management, around the event planning, contracting and pricing, revenue collection, third-party providers, things like that.
Any other questions for us at this time? Here's our contact info. If at any time any of you have any questions for us, do not hesitate to reach out. Our emails are there. Also, our phone numbers are there. So we're always available to answer any questions you all might have before our next meeting or anytime you have something for us.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
All right, Lauren, are we back to you?
Yes, thank you. I will pull up my slides again. All right, thank you. So as I mentioned, I am currently working on developing an internal audit policy. And so to start off that project, I benchmarked internal audit policies and charters from other North Carolina municipalities. And the most influential policies and charters that I researched included those from Winston-Salem, Fayetteville, and the city of Durham. So I am currently now developing an administrative policy for the city of Asheville that will be reviewed and approved by the city manager. And once that is reviewed and approved, we will share that finalized policy. So we hope to do that at the July committee meeting. All right. And lastly, I have an update on our ethics and compliance hotline. So we have renewed the contract with our third-party ethics and compliance hotline. That company is called Navex Global. And so concerns about employee ethics or policy violations can be reported through that hotline anonymously if the reporter desires to be so. So they can report concerns either through an online portal or by calling the hotline number. And then the internal audit program manager. So I will route those concerns for follow-up until they are resolved or closed out. And we are relaunching that program to ensure that employees are aware of the availability of the hotline. So we have shared the hotline's availability through our internal supervisors meeting. That was about a month ago now. And I'm going to be putting up some flyers about the hotline in our facilities so that everyone's aware of its availability. I've also shared that promotional poster for the hotline and the materials for this meeting. So as I said, that's been distributed internally. And then I've also updated the external website page for the hotline, which specifies the types of matters that should be referred to the hotline versus other avenues of communication like the water customer service line or the Asheville app, for example. So this is a summary of the activity that we had come through the ethics and compliance hotline in the third quarter. So since this committee met in January. So there were 5 total cases submitted since the first of this year. 4 of those were personnel matters and were handled by the department leadership and or human resources. And the last case of those should have been reported to water customer service. So they handled that as well. 2 of those 5 5 were submitted by employees and 3 by residents. And all of those cases have since been resolved and closed. So once again, our key takeaways, our internal audit program is fully staffed. We've contracted with our vendor to perform the audits this year using the risk assessment as our plan. Our goal is to perform those 4 audits I mentioned during this year, working on an internal audit policy, and then also renewing attention on the ethics and compliance hotline. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to take those.
Yeah, my only question, this has all been a great update. Lauren and Frank, do you guys just want to do a quick introduction of yourselves to the rest of the committee members?
Sure. So again, my name is Lauren Brune. I'm currently serving as the Internal Audit Program Manager, and I've been with the city for almost 8 years now in total. So I was a budget analyst to start for 5 years in the finance department as well. And then for 2 or 3 years, I worked in the Public Works Department as their financial business manager. So now I've come back to the finance department, and I'm really excited to be in this role and working with Jefferson Wells and working on the internal audit plans that we have for this year.
And good afternoon. My name is Frank McGowan, and I'm the Strategic Services Manager. I report to Tony McDowell. In 2 days, I will have been with the city for 16 years. And I've worked in 3 different departments. I've started out in the Parks Department as Business Services Superintendent. I've worked in finance in a number of different capacities. Most recently, I served as Interim Assistant Director for the Community and Economic Development Department for about 16 months. And in January, returned to finance to this role. And some new duties and new direct reports, and it's fantastic.
Great. Yep. Very pleased to have a couple new faces in the very important role of internal audit for the city. So nice to meet you guys all virtually. All right. Any other questions, comments from the rest of the attendees before we move on? Nope. All right. Well, next up, we have the fiscal year 2024 external audit update. And so I think we'll turn it over to Tony McDowell, Finance Director, and Becky Ogles, Assistant Finance Director.
All right. Well, thanks, Nate. Good to see everyone this afternoon. And I think you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Lauren. And I'm actually going to go ahead and turn this over to Becky, our Assistant Finance Director, and let her walk y'all through the slides. Happy to answer any questions at any point, though. So thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be back with you guys. I feel like we just talked about the end of 23, and here we are starting 24. So, but audit is underway, and it will continue through October. This is our second year with Cherry Beckert, and we anticipate that we'll be with them for about 5 years. And just kind of a reminder that the audit has to be completed and submitted to the LGC in order for us to be able to issue debt and maintain our credit ratings. So we can go to the next slide. So the auditors were actually here for field work last week, preliminary field work. They actually came here on site, which was wonderful. We didn't have much of that last year, and I like getting back in person a little bit. It was great to have them here. So we are in the middle, still doing a little bit of the interim field work and testing through this week. June 30th, of course, is our fiscal year end. And then we actually do a hard close of our financial system about a month and a half after. This lets us ensure that we can get as many transactions as possible into the system prior to the close. The month of August is mostly going to be our single audit testing or our grant testing. They have requested a final trial balance September 9th. The month of September will be the rest of the testing and starting to draft all of our financial statements. That'll continue through October. And it is our hope, like it is every year, to get the audit submitted to the LGC the week of October 31st. That's the deadline. And then we have tentative dates for the policy, HR, and human resources and audit committee joint meeting that we will present to you guys for November 12th. And then December 10th, we have a tentative date for the presentation to the council. So kind of like I mentioned, so the kickoff meeting for Cherry Beckert was actually April 3rd. The deadline calendar for just citywide, we just like to put that out early so that people know the dates that things are due, when we cut off POs, when we cut off contracts, things along those lines. That was actually shared that same week. I want to say it was April 4th. We have started interim field work. It was determined that the major single audit programs that we would look at this year are ARPA and Powell Bill. Those are two of our biggest in the state and federal buckets. They think they can get all the coverage that they need with those two, but of course there might be others that are added on just as we see final numbers come June 30th or a little bit after that. They already have done a lot of our process walkthroughs. They do those every year just to make sure that nothing has changed, but we did purchasing, accounts payable, utility and general billing, and payroll. So those are already completed. And then they also do annual meetings with different members of the city every single year. Every year they choose one council member. They do the mayor, city manager, finance director, assistant finance director, and this year they also did a meeting with the budget manager. So next steps. We are still doing a little bit of our interim field work, budget, just different revenue reviews, some census items. That's for our OPEB and our LEO that we do every year. We internally are just making sure that our mapping for the ACFR of all of our general ledger accounts is accurate. We saw a couple things that I think just year over year just need to be tweaked. So Tony and I are actually looking at that. And then there were also some suggested changes to like the notes of our ACFR that Cherry Beckert made last year. So Tony and I are also reviewing those to see if we would like to implement them this year for change. We are continuing with our regular reconciliations just in preparation for year end. We do a lot of support at this time of year to our departments to make sure that they have everything they need also for year end and get us everything that we need on a timely basis. And every year we do petty cash audits and inventory counts. So those will happen. Petty cash happens sometime in June. And then we do the inventory counts as close to July 1st or June 30th as we can. So that's kind of what's coming up next steps. And then we're back to our key takeaways. So it's underway again. It's a very long process. We're actually getting started a little bit earlier than we normally do, but I think it's great. We're getting some of the preliminary stuff knocked off early. So hopefully there won't be such a mad dash at the end. This is our second year, so we kind of know what to expect from our auditors. And then, of course, we are hoping to meet that October 31st deadline for submission to the LGC. So, any questions?
Not for me. Anyone else?
Awesome. And we'll continue to come back and do updates, and probably we'll have more in-depth information. We are really just kind of touching the surface of things right now, but by the next one, we'll probably have a lot more for y'all.
Sounds good. Thanks, Becky.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Next is addressing public comments. So we have no public comments. Any audio recordings have been transcribed and have been provided to the committee along with pre-submitted written comments. Before we adjourn, I just wanted to mention that Andrew Emery's time as a committee member is coming up, and he will not be seeking reappointment. Andrew, you are our longest serving committee member of a whopping, 3 years? Is that right?
Yeah, whatever one term here is.
So we have a productive end. Your last meeting, we have a filled internal audit department, so not a bad way to be sent off. So just wanted to thank you formally for your service to the committee.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right. Well, with that, now adjourn the meeting unless there are any objections. All right, so adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you.